Even Reverend French him in those days, they have put petrol all around his house. Why was the family as such targeted?
My Lord, I wish I could answer this question. I really wish I could answer and give and put some light on it, but I really don't know. You know, after the coup d'etat, there were 3 people in Seychelles who knew what was happening. Mr. René, Mr. Michel, and Mr. Berlouis. They had, yeah. I was the doctor, Minister of Planning, and I was doing my job, and I asked no questions, which is very bad. I asked no questions. I was doing my job very faithfully, and I expected my other colleagues to be doing their jobs also faithfully. But all these secrets about military affairs or police affairs were hidden away from me. And when something obvious happened, I would ask a question, what has happened? I would be told a lie. I would be told a lie. And until Mr. René must have thought that I was vaccinated and that I could be told now the truth about when 2 people were murdered at l'exile mission. Mr. Hoffman and Mr. Elizabeth, that Mr. René told me that the army did it. I realized that he had thought that I had become vaccinated, that I could be told the truth. He did a lot of good to me on that day, because it was this truth that when I went home that evening, I told my wife, start packing, because we are leaving the country. If I tell you, I will tell you a few things that if I were in your place, I wouldn't believe me. If I tell you that the North Koreans came to Seychelles to replace the Tanzanians, I think, I don't know, to train our people. I was foreign minister then. I knew they were coming when their plane was landing at Montfleury, at La Pointe-Laoué. Yeah. All these things that it would not be thought prudent to tell me that the North Koreans were coming here, because I would object. I would say something, why bring these people here? So I was not told. Too many things I was not told. Writing my book, I am so conscious that that many things in it are not far from the truth. They are truthful, but they are not the whole truth, because the whole truth was hidden away from me. And the colleagues that knew, they either knew that they had to shut up, or they were scared, like Mr. Saint-Ange was scared in telling me that Denous and Asher were tortured, because he was scared. That's what he told me, he was scared. So I wish I could answer more your question, my Lord, that I really don't know.
Do you think that the presence of President Michel would give a positive contribution so that we can finally have a real picture of what has happened?
Definitely, my Lord, definitely. And if Mr. Berlouis was still alive too, I would say definitely also. And because they know things that I did not know, that I was not told, that I was kept. Either it was thought that I was not the right person to know these kind of things, or that they wanted to keep the secret, you know. Yeah.
Thank you.
Doctor, you have come forward and told us what you know, would you encourage former President Michel to come forward and do the same if you are in touch with him?
Well, Minister Michel has not spoken to me for quite some time. As a matter of fact, when I left, he said he would never forgive me because I gave a slap in the face of his president. Well, he meant my resigning at 12 o'clock and leaving the same evening without nobody knowing that I was running away. They took that as a slap in the face of the president. And I have been boycotted ever since. Ever since. I'm a dead man. I recently read the book of Animal Farm. What's his name? George Orwell. George Orwell. Did you know that he wrote a book called 1985? You knew? I did not know. I only knew about that about 3 years ago. I saw the book at one of my daughter's house in Ireland, and he said in it something that I've written down because it's me. He says, when you have left a system like that, you are a dead person. You are a dead person. They make you disappear in the sense that your name is never mentioned, you never appear, they ask you for nothing. Sometimes, I don't want to boast, but I have run a service for the United Nations. I have served the continent of Africa as far as environment is concerned. I was the leader, the director of the program for the whole of Africa, including the islands, including Seychelles, for the United Nations Environment Program. And I retired and I live here. Do you think they would have ever asked me a question about the environment? Never. Because I must remain dead. That is, doesn't bother me. I have other priorities. But that's the way it is. That's the way it is. That's the way a single party system develops into. That's why I say that I cannot forgive myself for having accepted the one-party system instead of resigning at the time and go. Even more than the coup d'etat itself. Of course, it was the coup d'etat that led to it, that we all know. But I consider the coup d'etat as being perhaps of a lesser importance than the decision to turn it into a one-party state. The one-party state is where all the abuses come in. The abuses against human rights, you can find them there, in the one-party state.
Doctor, you have mentioned the case of the two people who were killed. The two people who were killed, Elizabeth and Hoffman. There was a third person in the car when the incident took place. That third person survived, but we have evidence that you saw him in the ICU, you spoke to him. What effect did that have on you?
Oh, yes. Well, it led to the decision. It was just before Mr. René told me who did it. I think I saw he must have been a Friday morning, because I used to work in the hospital between 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock every morning when I was a minister in the government. And that from day one, 1977, until the day I left. I visited the hospital in the morning and left in the evening. Visited in the morning, resigned at 12, and left in the evening. Now, indeed, I operated on 2 patients on a Thursday. Date, don't remember. And on Friday, I went to see my patients at the hospital. And as I entered the Dauphin ward in the hospital, I saw a bed was wrapped up, the curtains had been drawn. And when you see that, it always means that there is a very, very sick patient behind it. And stupidly enough, you will understand why later on, naively, and also the reaction of a doctor. I opened the curtain to ask the man, "How are you? What's the matter with you?" And not my patient. My patient that I had operated was just in front of him, just in front. And there I saw that man lying in bed, bandaged up everywhere, bandage everywhere. Just his mouth and nose. And there was a person, a lady, a woman, sitting on a chair and leaning, as so many people do in hospital, leaning on the bed. Now, I don't know whether the woman was the mother, the sister, or the wife. I don't know. I didn't know that man too, and I asked him what happened to him. He said the soldiers did that to him. And he went on, he said they killed 2 people that I had brought in my car, my taxi up there, and then they pushed me into the ditch or whatever it was, and I was picked up by somebody who brought me to the hospital. Now, the revolting thing, that's why I said stupidly, was I turned and looked at that woman who was looking at me, and I could read in her eyes that she was saying to herself, "Ha, you know very well what happened. You probably just come to see whether he's dead or alive." I could read that in her eyes. You are among them. You are part of them. That got me very mad, very mad. And I remember I shouted, and I know that the patient still remembers. He's dead now, the poor chap. He could testify that I shouted at the hospital and said, "We must stop killing people in this place." And I decided that we were going to have a meeting of I think it was the cabinet on that day. And after the meeting, I asked Mr. René that I saw what I've just told you now, what happened? And it was then that he said to me that they looked for trouble with the army and the soldiers let them have it. And that decided my quitting, leaving, my preparation for leaving, because I was scared. Don't forget, I remained scared, and I had to plan my leaving. This is why I resigned at 12 and left by the first plane 8 o'clock in the evening. The day before his re-election, I had planned it, and I had decided that nothing could happen to me the day before a re-election. 15th of June, 1984.
Just a little clarification. The third person who was the patient that you saw is still alive.
I know he's still alive. I've heard about him. I want to see him because I want to thank him. Because he's the guy who decided that I quit. And the best thing I did in my life was to quit and run away. Now, I want him also to say thank you to me. I'll tell you why. Because the American ambassador told me that he was shifting this fellow away and got him a job in Harvard University in the cafeteria there. I know all this. The ambassador told me. And I think Fisher, David Fisher was the name of the ambassador. He trusted me, and I hope he trusted that I would say nothing. And I said nothing, because if I had told the authorities that this man was running away, he would probably not be with us today. So I want him to thank me for that, for having kept my big mouth shut.
Do you think Sorry. Do you think these deaths, like Maxime, TRNUC, and the others, were planned by the state and executed by the state?
Which name you mentioned? TRNUC and Asher?
TRNUC, Asher, Maxime.
Team, I was not here. I was gone.
Okay.
I was gone. But TRNUC and Asher, yes, I was here. Well, I suppose that in this case, all I know by hearsay was that the post office, the chief post officer, discovered the gun and told the authorities. And the authorities and the gun, the bits of gun that was shipped, that was posted to TRNUC and Asher, was made known to the authorities, and they arrested well, of course, Albert Wade must have ordered the arrest or to have something done about these two people. There's no doubt. All I can tell you is that the next day after these two people were murdered at Anse-Forban, after a meeting we were having, probably again a cabinet meeting, Mr. René said, "Oh, by the way, this is the way he said it. Oh, by the way, there was a big explosion at Anse-Forban last night. Very big explosion. People heard it, even Anse Royal heard it." His words. And we found two bodies in a car, in a burnt-out car. We don't know what these bodies are, but we know the car belonged to Adalbert TRNUC because of the number plate on it. And I said, "Well, what happened? What could have happened?" And he said, "They probably were making a bomb, and the bomb exploded." And I believed it up to there. I believed it. I believed it for years. And we know it was not that.
Another case that comes to mind very frequently is the case of Mr. Hassan Ali. Would you have anything you can share with us on that one?
No way. Except that I remember Hassan Ali, he was a militant fellow for the Democratic Party. He was dead against the coup d'etat, and he probably shouted a bit in town, and the authorities decided that they'd get rid of him. When he disappeared, I remember asking Rolly Marie. Now, Rolly Marie, you will remember, he was a policeman, and he was one of the coup d'etat, involved in the coup d'etat. I said, "What happened to Hassan Ali?" And he said to me, "I think he's gone into hiding just to punish us, make us look for him." I wrote that in my book. I understand there must have been other people. Thank you. I understand that must have been other people who know better. That's all I know about Hassan Ali. There was an Italian that was shot, a fellow called Franco, I think. He was shot. And I was told by Albert René that the bullet that shot that man, there are no guns in Seychelles had such a bullet. And he knew that I knew that he had picked up all the guns by then. So there were supposed to be no other guns on the island. But this bullet did not belong to any of the guns. So he was very worried himself.
Doctor, merci. You said somewhere in your statement, I asked the people of Seychelles to forgive me. Am I correct? You said I asked the people of Seychelles to forgive me, to forgive you.
Yes.
Now, what do you have to say about the family of the victims from him?
Yes.
What do you have to say about the family?
Well, Yeah, well, the family of Changkim, I know two of the girls fairly well. One of them works in the central bank, is a very nice person. I see him sometimes, and she's very, very nice and correct with me. Another one is married to a Seychellois, and they live in Canada, I think. And she came to see me she was here in Seychelles about 2 to 3 years ago, and she came to see me accompanied by Archbishop French, because Archbishop French and we are friends. We are very good terms. And the bishop came with her, and she wanted to know what you want to know from me, you see. And I told her what I have told you here about her father. And I think she was more or less satisfied that I don't know any more than that. So I don't know the boys. I don't know the one who was arrested. I don't know him. I don't know. Yeah.
If I might, say to you, you wrote your book, you've been willing to come forward, and it's sort of, I just wonder how we get people that know more to get to the place that you got to. How did you get to the place where you were willing to share what you know? Because without us somehow tapping into that in other people, we're not going to get our objective public record about what happened during this period. So I'm just wondering, it must feel for you like a burden, right, to be able to take responsibility, a burden off your chest to be able to say this happened.
I'm very happy to do it, man. I'm very happy to.
Yeah.
No, my problem is that, and that ever since I wrote my book, I told you that people tell me you haven't told the whole truth. I said, since you are telling me that, you must know part of the truth. So write that part of the truth, that you write it down, and nobody writes it. I know that Mr. Maxime wrote about the coup d'etat. It's all wrong what he wrote. And when I told him, Mr. Maxime, I said, it's all wrong what you said. He said, well, that's what my people told me. Well, of course, he wrote what he was told. And so that's it.
I guess, taking responsibility, I personally believe, is a very empowering thing to do, particularly when you're taking responsibility for something that is wrong, right? And that's what we really want to encourage people to do. So, how did you come to the point where you felt, for your conscience,
How did I come to that?
Yeah.
Because when it was decided to have this commission set up, I was for it, and I said, this is needed here. We need that to get the people to reconcile here in Seychelles, because the country is so badly divided, and there's still all sorts of hatred and people want revenge, and I was for that, and it was no problem for me to announce in that meeting we had in about two years ago, I think it was, to announce that I would be prepared to come and give evidence. Please call me anytime, at any time. I'm here, I'm retired, I'm free, I'm not busy doing. I'll come and give you my bit of the truth. So I'm hoping that other people would feel that it is I don't feel myself that so much that I'm letting something out to make me feel, because I also feel rather innocent in all these things. Many people have blamed me, like for instance, having given injections, given pills, or going and shake hands with Dauphin, and all these things which are totally untrue. And I am happy doing it, and perhaps by being happy doing it, I can encourage other people who still have some truth and would need to come and tell the truth here, to come along and tell the truth. If it is a burden for them, they will get rid of the burden, if it is a burden for them. but I can do no more. But that's why I'm offering to come again, in order to set, if you want to see it that way, to set a sort of an example.
I mean, do you think people would still be afraid to come forward and tell the truth?
I think so. I think so. I still think that people are still afraid here on many things, yeah.
And
Why do I think that people are
that
still
people
afraid?
are still afraid? Yes, I mean we've moved on
I
since,
think,
hopefully.
No. I have no proof, madam. No proof for that. But people are still afraid of a number of things here. Have you noted that sometimes people talk to you very softly, don't want anybody to hear what they're saying? So people are still much less than before. It is improving as we go along. The reversion to parliamentary democracy has helped this to happen. People are less afraid, but there are still some people who are still afraid, who mistrust what could happen to them. Yeah. I cannot prove that, madam. I must admit that I cannot prove, but it is a feeling, a gut feeling that I have.
Well, since there's this perception of fear, I would like here again to let people who have any knowledge realize that we are seeking the truth. We're not seeking retribution. Any perpetrator who can come forward, say what he knows, ask for forgiveness under the Act is guaranteed an amnesty. Once an amnesty is given, he will be free. The evidence we collect will not be used in any court of law, except for perjury, but otherwise people cannot be touched for what they say and what they let us know.
Yeah, well, Mr. Green, I believe you, of course, but I wonder whether the people who are listening to you now, whether they trust you. I'm just asking the question. Do they trust you, or they think that you are trying to bring them in and that big things will happen to them? I don't know. It's just that I feel that people who are still worried, people who are, some people are guilty. Some people are really guilty, and they're scared. I don't know how you will overcome that. I think what you are doing, what you are saying now, helps to overcome it. Keep on saying it, and I think you might get some good result.
Dr. Ferari, in the spirit of our mission to bring forth truth, reconciliation, and national unity, would you, on behalf of yourself, as a former minister from the regime who was brought forward by the coup, and on behalf of all the actors of the coup of 1977, offer your apologies to the Chang Him family? And will you contribute to bring a sense of closure to all the members who, since the death of their brother, they have been mourning? And my prayer is that through this commission, they will be able to bring forth closure to their state of life.
Yes, my Lord, I'm willing to do that, and I will do it again. I've done it many times before, and perhaps it's needed to be done openly to this commission. That of course I have not gone specifically to the Chang Him family, but I have gone to generally all those who have suffered from the coup d'etat, that I take my responsibility for having been a member of that government that did those kind of things. And for that, I ask people of Seychelles, including the Chang Him family, and perhaps particularly the Chang Him family, because I know that some of them really think or thought that I was really deeply involved. I mean, if they hear things like that I went to shake hands with Dufay, if they hear things that I was giving injections, what would you do? You'd be very angry with me. You'd be angry with me. So I tell them that I did not do it, but still I'm sorry because I belong to that group of people. I belong to that party, and I worked for 7 years. I worked as a minister in that government. So my apologies goes to all of them.
Dr. Ferari, thank you so much for expressing your wishes to bring forth reconciliation with the family. Do you have other things that would be able to help us in our findings so as to be able to continue in our query for the truth?
All I can say, my Lord, is that I am offering myself at any time. You can call me with 2 or 3 hours notice, would be all right. I will come. And at any time that in any other instances where people are giving evidence on another case, I can come and give my bit of truth. I insist on that because I do not have the full truth.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ferari, for coming and for being willing to answer all of our questions. We've exhausted what we want to discuss with you today. We will no doubt call you again, I think, in the future when we go through other cases. We will now adjourn and we will return at 1 p.m. where our next witness, previously scheduled at 3 o'clock, but he's now agreed to come at 1 p.m. So we'll adjourn until then. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. All rise. We'd like to thank you for attending the first session of the Truth, Reconciliation and National Unity Commission. And like the chairperson have said, we'll reconvene at 1 p.m. Thank you all for attending.